Okay. Hello and welcome everybody to the final Lunar Alchemy session of 2021. We're in the final couple days of this year, and today we're going to be catching the tail end of the sun's transit through gate 58 and the moon's reflection of the shadow of dissatisfaction. So this is a unique gene key, which has some interesting qualities, especially in the shadow area, and is part of the codon ring of seeking, one of those rings that we've been kind of working through over a longer period of time. And I'm excited to be discussing today kind of this key of that entire ring that to some extent sets all human seeking in motion. So today we're going to talk about how the shadow of dissatisfaction may lead us on to the path of enlightenment, which is kind of there's an interesting dynamic going on there. So thanks for joining us. Welcome to everybody who is watching on Facebook. And of course, welcome to our solar members here in our webinar group. If you're watching on Facebook and are familiar with Lunar Alchemy, would like to join with an active membership, we offer a quantum energetic transmission every single week to assist in the processing of the energies that are taking place as the sun moves around the entire wheel, and allows us to more effectively process those lower frequency energies that are still present in the world and in our lives, so that we can move to a higher frequency state of being. So thank you, Rachel. Must be the Christmas glow, the post-Christmas glow, the pre-New Year glow. So Bella.
With a lot of vitality, I shared this live in a lot of groups because I just felt that this is the last one of the year. And if people want to tune in, if they are online, I was feeling before this week that, are we even going to do it today? Are people even here? And there's something with my fourth line, like that externalization, the truth getting across. And I actually feel this energy of like, whoever is on, interact with us, write comments on Facebook as well. I feel like that's part of what the 58 wants to do. It is collective circuitry. It is here because it wants the betterment of the world. It wants to walk into the future in a way that is more joyous, in a way that is more fulfilled, and it feels into like everybody. What can we improve now so that we can have more joy, so that we can live better in the future? And what gate is better, when it comes to New Year's resolutions and the hopes and the knowing of like what's coming in the next year.
Yeah, so glad that you're bringing that up right at the beginning. It is such a perfect gateway for this time when people are reassessing how did last year go? What are we going to do in the new year? Perhaps for those who have looked into the evolution of our human calendars, perhaps the reason that our current calendar is new on January 1st and not some more seasonal time like the Chinese New Year, for instance. Perhaps it has something to do with this 58 energy leading us into, really propelling us into something new. So Bella, I'm wondering if you have a perspective about the way that this shadow frequency of dissatisfaction, how does it function in our systems to kind of move us into something that is beneficial? You know, I mean, we just listen to the title and it's the shadow of dissatisfaction, and like seems like a hallmark of our society that people are inherently in some way dissatisfied with the state of things, whether it's the politics, the money we're making, the relationships we have, the family we're a part of. People are constantly driven by this dissatisfaction. So how is this good?
I was looking at the mechanics of this, the human design mechanics, when we're recording the Portals of Deconditioning course with Ashley, and really like understanding mechanically where it comes from. So it is in the root center. In root center, we have a lot of energy. It's the fuel of life, and different fuels that are here to, you could say, nurture different things, different processes. And usually when we think about life force and the way the pulse of life and the mutation happens, we think about the middle pillar. So you've heard me speak many times about the 60 and the 3, that is between the root and the sacral, and it's kind of shooting up that life force. And it's, I always say it's creative, it's individual. It's interesting when we look at the 58 because it comes out on the side of the root and it connects to the spleen. And the spleen is the center of our health, our immune system. So here we have a direct connection between that life force, that fuel of the root, and then our immune system. So it's going to have to do with vitality. It's going to have to do with health. And it's part of the collective circuitry, like I said in the beginning. It's actually here to feel into patterns and rhythms and see the things that are working better. So, and it has, because it is connected to the spleen, it's also our instinct. It's going to see what has been spoiled and what can be done better, because it's that inherent ability to see the patterns. And in itself, that's actually really, really good, because when we can see in 2021 what didn't work, for 2022, we can actually change something in the pattern, and then we can live better. So the discernment that's there in the low frequency, it's not a bad thing in itself. What I believe, when we look at it from a life force perspective, and when we look at also the frequencies that we have in the shadow, so it's interfering. And it's interfering with life force. It's interfering with that natural process of our life force connected to our health, connected to our intuition. And we don't have two words. Usually we have a repressive word and a reactive word, but interfering is always kind of active in a loop that's not going to serve us. So what happens is that instead of just being grateful of life and of the life force, we kind of interfere with life and with our life force, and that we get stuck there. And that's what I see as the negative. And part of it is to kind of learn. It's coming back to our life force and to feel just the bliss of being alive. And I told you, I think in a voice message a few days ago, I had a wake-up call maybe 2 weeks ago now, where I realized for 2 weeks I wasn't really vital, I wasn't really healthy, and I was afraid that it was something serious. And then I thought about all the mornings, all the times in my life I woke up and I had vitality. And instead of being super grateful of that, often I'm dissatisfied about something else. So I think as human beings, we have this we can get stuck in the rhythm of not being grateful, of being ingrateful. But then when we realize that there's something with that energy that we don't have, that vitality that we don't have, I think for me at least, I come back to saying, wow, I have this in me, and this is keeping me healthy. And this is the way that I can serve the world. When I am empowered and healthy, and I am kind of circulating my life force in a constructive way, then I can serve the world. And this gene key is part of the cross of healing. It's part of the cross of service. So when we are using that discernment for the betterment, and it's not betterment in the sense of like, oh, everything is wrong, and but just if we allow life force to flow, if we allow life to kind of live through us, then we are going to heal and serve. That's that's part of just how the energy moves. And there is so much energy here. So either you can have it to kind of destroy and criticize, and or you can have it to uplift. And that's the difference between the two energies.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's about what you said that's really interesting about this particular energy is the fact that you cannot repress this energy. The life force is so powerful that we actually cannot hold it in. So there's no state of being that we can be in where we are actually stopping life from moving through us, at least until our bodies are dead. And I think that's interesting because when we look at how, you're mentioning how this impacts our health and our ability to be of service in the world, it's almost like every human being is going to get railroaded into this experience of reactivity to our own life force. And the nature of that reactivity is interference, to interfere with the energy itself. So one of the qualities that I think we see with others of the gene keys that are part of the Ring of Seeking is that they're like the futility of the energy itself is the driving factor that causes evolution to move forward. So when we experience dissatisfaction, we feel that inner drive to correct or improve a situation. Like I said, whether it's our career, our money, our relationships, our stuff, our health, we're driven by this dissatisfaction with the state of things. And as that energy is externalized into our attempts to, fix this for ourselves, to eliminate that sense of dissatisfaction, it is that very activity that interferes with the life force itself from coming in and giving us a full-on experience of pure vitality. So it's like a catch-22. You can't just make yourself vital by going out there and trying to change something. And I think this is really where this quality of spiritual seeking becomes so apparent, is eventually we're going to realize that we're kind of stuck in this. It always makes me think of the Greek myth of Sisyphus, who is cursed to continually push a boulder uphill. It's like an endless hill that will never, he's never going to get to the top. Whenever we're out there trying to change things in order to generate fulfillment, we will always be dissatisfied with the results. And it's like that drive that to fix that moves us eventually inward into a deeper sense of understanding what's happening within us and through us. So Bella, today we're in the 6th line of this sun's transit. In fact, in just about an hour and a half, the sun will be moving into the next gate. So so I'm curious what you see around kind of this particular moment as we get ready for a transition through this gate, and what's been going on over the previous days. You know, last week we talked about gene key 10 and the movement from the solstice moving into Christmas, and what's going on with the sun's motion on the horizon. Now we are in a stage of the sun moving back northward, at least on the northern hemisphere. So we're getting longer days. They're still pretty short, but you know, things are moving in a new direction, and I'm curious how you're recognizing that direction in terms of what's going on.
Yeah, I might have mentioned this last time as well, but there's a lot happening here with Pluto. And what we had last year in 2020, in the beginning of 2020, we had Pluto, we had Saturn and Jupiter together here in the 61. And that's when we can see that there are structures in society, Capricorn, that are transforming, that are falling apart, that where there is a rebirth, but it's Capricorn. So it's also kind of a bit, it's resistant to change at the same time. And the other aspect that we've had 3 times this year, and the last time was now over Christmas on the 24th, we have the square, the tension between Uranus and Saturn. So kind of the old and the new, or the way we have done things before and the kind of unexpected way that things are taking place more and more now. So that's there is this tension, and there is something that we have all felt for the last few years since January 2020, where the world is changing and structures are changing, and you know, even the way that things have worked with, like, I'm just thinking about money, because this week I didn't have my Swedish bank identity because my Swedish phone number has expired, and just the whole thing that created, being in another country and not being able to receive an SMS and not being able to get a card and activate it, all these things like that a few years ago would not have been that way. The way that we have QR codes and like electronic identities is just one example of like how the institution of money is changing. So what I see, well, of course, those bigger planets are out of the way and they're moving on. But what we have here with Pluto is that we have Venus and we have Mercury. Those closer planets are there. And Venus is about our values. And Mercury is this analyzing in a logical way to find the truth, to find our truth. And it's the messenger that goes fast around the wheel. And if I don't remember wrong, Mercury just went over. So it looks like they are far apart. But if we look here, we actually have Mercury in the first line of the 60, and we have Pluto in the last line of the 61. So they are basically on each other still. So we have this, like, they are meeting here with Mercury and with Venus. And both Venus and Mercury are like going over and coming back over again, because they're going retrograde and then they're coming over again. So there is this time of like reviewing our values, reviewing our truth, and maybe actually saying, what do I as a person in the personal part of my life, what do I do with those changes that were set on course in the beginning of last year? Now it's 2 years later. What am I doing with it? What do I value in this? How do I set up my life? What do I see as my truth in this? And it's interesting too, because we are going into this nodal shift of the nodes having been in Sagittarius and in Gemini now for a year and a half. So we are moving into nodal shift. It's going to be in Scorpion, Taurus. So it's going to be also what we value when it comes to Taurus, and what can we simplify. But also there are things that need to die and transform, like completely going together with that theme of Pluto. And that's also what Venus and Mercury are looking at and saying, okay, there's no way back. There just is no way back. So it's more about, how do I as a person relate to those changes that are happening? How do I set up my life on the outside, Taurus, and how do I set it up on the inside and how I feel about it, Scorpio? And that's what's going on. So for me, that's what this kind of new year energy that we are in now is asking those questions. And it really helps us that Venus and Mercury are not just like running on, they're actually coming over and giving us chance over chance. And that's also where we are going to have to feel into Pluto, that is connected to this death and rebirth and transformation. And for people who are here in the US, of course, with also Pluto being back to 250 years after where they proclaimed the freedom of this country, there's also a big transformation there, going back to, of course, the structures and the way the institution, the systems are set up. So maybe even, I think every country is going to have this in one way or another, but it's very apparent for us that are here in this country.
Yeah, so it's interesting. What's occurring to me is how this kind of assessment of the past and drive or motivation to strive for a different future is really at the heart of this particular energy and how we can interact with it. Richard Rudd discusses how part of the quality of this energy is in the inability to remain present, to constantly be focusing on the future. And this is partly what drives the energy of this gene key in the first place. As we strive to change the world to create a better future, that better future never actually arrives because we're always in the now. So as long as we're engaged in that process, we're kind of condemned to being dissatisfied. And ironically, that very activity is part of what improves the world. When people, we sometimes talk about, I think in a general sense, I don't mean you and me, but in a general sense, when people talk about highly motivated individuals and what it is that drives them, there's this deep, deep dissatisfaction with something in life, and it drives them to take intensive activity to create changes. And I think what's interesting is that, you're talking about in this country, in the United States, that archetype itself is kind of venerated as like, well, this is like the ideal way to be. This is the way that you get ahead. This is the way that you become successful, is to kind of try to feed your own dissatisfaction. And so we have all these aspects of society that are supporting that movement of feeding that dissatisfaction. The comparison with the neighbor and the consumerism of this country and the kind of, I got a new phone because I had to. My carrier was like, well, your iPhone 6 isn't going to work anymore. Or I guess I had an iPhone 7. Your iPhone 7 isn't going to work anymore. You have to upgrade. And large portions of our society are like really excited about the next new iteration of the technology that becomes available, and they are motivated to the tune of $1,000, $1,500 worth of expenditure for a phone, which, I mean, if you think about in our lifetime, when I was a kid and there was no such thing as a cell phone, you had the same phone for your entire, like, for forever. It never went bad. There was nothing wrong. I mean, yeah, it had a little rotary dial on it and everything. Anyways, these types of things that are building up, and the movements of social media around like Instagram and getting 1 million likes, and the possibility of making money by having a social media following, just for the sake of that. You can make videos on YouTube, and if enough millions of people do that, well, guess what? You've got a new day job. So all of these things are like, they're like really driving this inner dissatisfaction with our experience of our own life force. And like we were talking about, it interferes with that very life force to some extent. So but here's the kicker about this one that I think that just kind of like delights me about it, is that you can't avoid it. It's almost like the more you strive, the more you embrace your own dissatisfaction and do your best to affect those changes on the future, the closer you are to the realization that you aren't present, the closer you are to the realization that you're actually interfering with the only source of power that you truly have access to, which happens here and now. And it's like this one-way journey that everybody's going to take their own time with, but everyone is going to take the same path. Everyone is going to move in the same direction. And it's not often in the discussion of the cities. Here with Gene Key 58 is the city of Bliss. It's not often that in the discussion of those cities that Richard Rudd discusses what is enlightenment. But here's this particular gene key that is the classic version that is described by mystics and sages and those who aspire to something of that nature. That complete dissolution of focused consciousness, where there is no longer any separation between the individual and the other. And I wonder, Bella, about your perspective. There's so many aspects of society that I was bringing up that you can get lost in low frequency experience in. Do you see that as an inherent aspect of an inevitable march towards an experience of enlightenment? Is this like of all the things that are going on in society that people look at and criticize and say, oh, that's low vibration, that's terrible stuff, you should get away from negativity and blah, blah, blah. Is it possible that all of those things are actually what's needed for the path to be realized?
And that's a great question. And I can see it in two ways. Well, first, when you're speaking, I kind of just see this soup of everything. And it's just different aspects that are there and that we are here to learn to navigate. And actually, it's better if we're not so fast of putting labels on them as good or bad. There's a lot of different stories and fables that at the end of the day, we don't really know if something is good for us or bad for us until we see all the events that came after. Maybe that was a blessing and not a curse in itself. So I think to label things as evil or really good, it has a danger in itself. And at the same time, I do believe as human beings that we learn by contrast. So when somebody says, oh, you're in this horrible relationship with this horrible person, well, that's just a reflection on you. So you must really hate yourself or something. I don't necessarily think that it's always this I always think there is something to see and learn, but it's not always that just simple translation, because life is complex as the soup, like that I'm saying, that we are actually swimming in and we're learning to navigate. So I believe that part of the contrast that we are living now is kind of making us wake up. And that's just one thing. I know that you and I have spoken about this year, losing loved ones and kind of waking up in this age. Like, I guess we are kind of middle age or something now. I've never thought of myself like that, but it's like I'm becoming aware of, like, I'm mortal, and there are people in the very next generation that are leaving. So I'm going to be the oldest, and there are people even in our age that for different reasons are also leaving. And with what's going on in the world, I think even in all ages, even as a kid, I know that some kids have that kind of thing with God and with death. I never even thought about it as a child. I think I had a healthy worldview thanks to my mom. But now I believe that children, for obvious reasons, they are going to be much closer to death, and there's going to be a friction there. So absolutely, I believe that right now is a time where we learn by contrast, and even just like we say, that tension between the new and the old, and the way that the planets are also showing us contrast. That is important, because when you see the contrast, and that's what Mercury and Venus are asking us for now, like, what is your truth? What are your values? And yeah, and I don't think it's going to change your life if you think it's worth it to pay $1,700 for an iPhone or not. That's not what's going to, like, fuel your evolution. But to know, I would say, in this time and age, that technology is inevitable. So how do you do the best out of it? And also, because we are speaking about the 58, how can you live in this world where you are a natural man or woman, and look at the technology in a way so that you don't allow it to interfere too much with being a natural man or woman? Because that's what I feel, that there can be confusion when we tune in too much into the technology, that we even forget our own biology. And I think that's the biggest red flag that the 58 is showing us. You are life force, and there's this direct, like I said, connection to the spleen. You're here to be connected with life, with your immune system, with your vitality all the time. That's the foundation of life. Don't forget that. So don't let any of those don't let the soup, don't drown in the soup, but come back to your own vitality, your own discernment. That feels important.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting with this particular gene key. We often see such a natural progression from around the wheel of how one, whatever transit the sun happens to be in, it's like preparing you for the next stage of evolution. And here we are, having come out of the 10th gate and the gift of naturalness, something that you were mentioning, and it leads us into this state of dissatisfaction with experience, which if we are completely sort of beholden to this energy, there's no chance of us experiencing our own naturalness. We can't. So this one, to some degree, it has this like retroactive, preventative type of energy, where as we're running lower frequency energy through our systems, they're going to those low frequency experiences are going to reinforce themselves. And while I wholeheartedly agree with you that making a goal in life be to always have the newest iPhone, or to have the most expensive car, or to have I don't know, any of those surface level goals that have to do with materials, we can say, hey, those aren't going to serve our evolution. But what if the only way to realize our own inherent trajectory that is hinted at by the human design system, by the hologenetic profile of the gene keys. What if the only way to really come into harmony with that is to go full throttle at those sort of non-evolutionary desires? Because at some point that awareness is going to dawn on you that says, hey, I'm never going to get this boulder to the top of the hill. This hill is endless. You know, I'm just going to keep pushing it. And it's like somehow grace happens in the realization of the futility of our attempts to eradicate those lower frequency experiences from our lives. And it's like it's almost like a cosmic joke, you know, that that here we have this huge motivation to do so much to improve the world, and yet built into that very energy is the impossibility of satisfying that need in the way in which we go about it, until we're completely exhausted from our striving and our attempts. We're kind of stuck on that wheel. And you know, it just kind of makes me think about, wow, how prevalent this particular shadow is in human experience. You know, every level of society, the exchange of money, even providing a high frequency level of service to other people, it's still being driven in many ways by this shadow, no matter how much of it we've been able to eradicate. So Bella, any thoughts for our Facebook group before about this whole year, or where we're going next, or I don't know, what's on your mind at this point of our discussion?
Yeah, I just feel, because we are going into the 38, and you were saying we're right on the cusp, that at the end of the day, you know, once we're back in our own body and we appreciate to be there, we appreciate to be sovereign in our biological vehicle, I would say the year is starting in the 38, and that's where we find what's worth fighting for. And that might be different for all of us. And maybe we would say the highest frequencies that we're here to fight for love, because love is always going to conquer fear. So that's the highest expression. But how that's going to look for each one of us, knowing that the 38 we're going into is individual circuitry, is going to be unique. So that would be, for me, where the year is starting. And I think that's a very good place. We come into our inner knowing, and we see that fuel that I have, this life force that I have, what does it want to be used for? What is the higher purpose of this? And it's connected, the 38 is connected to the 28, which is also that direct connection from the root to the spleen. So what's your higher purpose? What is the things where, you know, we were speaking about death a little bit just a few minutes ago. When life ends here, what's going to feel, you know, how are you going to feel honored for what you put your energy towards? That feels important. And the next gate then is the 58. It has to do with our ascension as a species here on the planet. So yeah, that's kind of the energy that we're starting the new year in. Yeah.
Oh, super exciting. And one of the things that I love about this process that we've been doing since maybe, I think it was sometime in February we began, possibly going into March. One of the things I love about what we do is that each time we meet and get to have a discussion, it activates those aspects of our consciousness and awareness that are still riding these lower frequency expressions. No matter how much our ego may like to pretend that we're above and beyond these experiences. And as we engage with these quantum energy transmissions, it's like a fuel to move into the next stage of evolution. We get this little rocket boost every week, and it really feels like a powerful process to engage in, especially over a long period of time. And as we come across, I don't have the 58, but I've got the 18, the connection channel, and in the spleen that you were talking about today, Bella. And I have the programming partner, the 52, in a defined channel between the sacral and the root. And so these energies, from, as a personal contemplation of the gene keys that are, we can certainly focus on the pathways of the hologenetic profile and really get all sorts of benefit from that. But as we move through each stage of this wheel, we begin to see these deep connections that are going on inside us that, I don't have the 58 defined at all in anywhere. And yet it still feels like, oh man, this is such an important energy for me to engage with and to realize, how do I interact with it? How do I use my energy, use my life force? How do I experience vitality, and when? One of the things that is mentioned about what's difficult about this particular gene key is that we often get these little glimpses of pure vitality in our life, maybe because of a circumstance showed up that was just right for us, or we relaxed into an experience in just the right way, perhaps unconsciously. And then we go about trying to reproduce that situation, which is, of course, going to thwart our efforts, because now we're interfering with the energy again. So it's this process that we've been going around the wheel and are going to complete in the next couple of months in this format. It's just really, I continue to see new and deeper value in this process as we move through it. So if you're watching on Facebook, thanks for joining us. Feel free to click the link in the comments to join us with a solar membership. You'll receive a quantum energy transmission every week and access to downloading the entirety of our meetings, so you can have those and revisit them maybe the next year or some other time when you're contemplating a particular gene key. You can join us if you're looking for a new trajectory in your life. Lunar Alchemy is a gentle and deeply powerful way to redirect your life in a high frequency direction. So we will look forward to seeing you on Facebook in 2022. Have a really beautiful, happy new year. All right, so we'll continue with our members. All right. Yes, the 18. I find I have have an unconscious, my design has the 18 and the 17. So I have this, the gate of correctiveness, you know, this 18, the gate of the channel of judgments. And then I also have the 17, the opinions. And the two just,
I feel that in you a lot. Like, you are not that person who just criticize, and you're not the person who's like dissatisfied either. So it's beautiful how, and even with that, like you said, the 52-9, like it can be like, it can really kind of get stuck on something and be really not a fun energy.
oh man, but Bella, you don't get the benefit of listening to my inner dialogue and how horribly I suffer that inner dialogue sometimes, that just literally does not stop with the like, whoa, but if you did it this way, it would be so much more efficient, you know? Yes, I also have the benefit of the gift of restraint through, now I've forgotten the number of that one.
The 52.
The 52, yeah. The gift of restraint is really, really helpful in working with the 18. And, you know, I think also with this 58, the restraint that's required to understand how do I engage with this inner drive of dissatisfaction? How much of my attention do I give to it? How much of myself am I wrapping up in this process of dissatisfaction? Or am I able to restrain myself to some degree and recognize it as an inherent human energy that is not individual or personal to me? You know? And I feel like there's a deep key. We've talked about this a bunch of times, Bella, and you know, we're having this conversation about, okay, we're about to complete the whole wheel. What do we do next? And one of the things that has been cropping up all year long in my awareness is the power of these programming partners and how they, you know, function together to catalyze massive transformation in our experience. So do you have the 58, Bella?
No, I don't, but I have quite a lot. If we think about circuitry, I have a lot in that collective circuitry, but I have it higher up in the chart. So it starts with that 15, 58, and then it goes in the 952 that you have kind of concentrate on one thing, and then it goes up in the patterns of the 515 and realizes the patterns, and then it goes up in the 731, which is one of my main channels, which is that. Yeah. Speaking out the direction that you've understood from the other ones. And then I also have the 16 in the throat and the 62, which connects with your 17, that can kind of see, you know, the bigger, not only just see the bigger perspective, but also speak to it and kind of be precise in what the steps are. So it's cool kind of how we are having a lot of that collective circuitry that is here for the betterment of humanity. And you have parts of it and I have parts of it.
Yeah, the dynamics of how designs function in relationship is probably something that we could endlessly dive into in understanding. So as we complete this 2021 year, you know, many people make New Year's resolutions, and the pattern, I think, that is sort of a collective pattern is a burst of activity. You know, gyms almost live on New Year's resolution memberships. where the gym fills up all of January. It's literally packed. And then February, it starts to thin out. And then by March, it's like really almost goes back to normal within just a couple of months. It's like this massive amount of energy that we have available to us through dissatisfaction. It peters out because our interference has prevented the consistent flow of vitality through us that enables the evolution of a pattern through deep practice. And today's transmission is to some degree related to that process. And it's also, ironically, even though this is a collective circuitry, the experience of this transmission is going to be extraordinarily unique, depending on how it is that you relate with the frequency of this particular gene key and gate. If you have a great deal of your self-identity wrapped up in the working out of dissatisfaction, which I'm not trying to make judgment about that. That's a fantastic pathway in the quest for enlightenment, according to the information of this gene key. If you have a lot of your identity wrapped up in this dissatisfaction, this transmission has the potential to bring you into greater and more widespread dissatisfaction. It also has the potential to bring you into a state of reactivity in a very strong way. Because this particular energy comes through every human system only through reactivity, the repressive aspect is not going to color your experience of this particular energy in any way. And so oftentimes we look at reactivity as a negative. But what I want to encourage in terms of a contemplative process with this is to recognize and simply be aware of the use of your vital energy in the pursuits of that which you wish to change in your life or in the environment. How are you using that energy, and how do you feel as you use it? Yeah, Bella, I actually would love for you just posted something on the chat, and I'd love to hear you talk about this because I have a feeling it's going to give us some deeper insight.
You know, often when somebody says something, you're like, oh, wow, that's exactly like I am, you know, especially when you speak about those kind of things that everybody does. And it's interesting when you feel like, no, I would never sign up for something. And then 3 months later, I would not be in it. Because for me, it's very much like, if I'm in, I'm in. And I often say that, you know, to the last drop of blood. And I feel like the 38 is coming in, and possibly because we're not meeting. I mean, it's going to be in between this week and next week. So maybe that's why it wants to kind of speak a little bit here. So that is my South Node. And it's that thing, you know, if I'm in, I'm in, and it's going to be there till the last drop of blood. But you can also see that in my, you see that because my South Node is that 38, and then my moon and my Jupiter is the 28, which is that channel of struggle. Like we're in it, and we go down to the Scorpio underworld if we need to the deepest depth of things. And then also my whole incarnation cross is in fixed sign. So Taurus is fixed earth. But if you look at the incarnation cross, it's a cross in the wheel, and everything that is, you know, 90 degrees like it's going to be fixed. So fixed earth, fixed water, fixed fire, like it's all the fixed elements. So of course, then it's like consistent, and that's the way it is. And then I think too with the 4-6, because we are so kind of idealistic, we cannot like blow out our own illusion. We need to do it. If my ideal is that I'm going to go to the gym, for example, every day, then I have to live up to my own ideal. In the fourth line, it doesn't like betrayal. And it, of course, doesn't like self-betrayal either. So it's going to trust itself that it can do it, and it can do it every day. So yeah, and as a sacral generator, you respond, and you're not like a manifesting generator where you can like, you say yes, and then your body, you go into it, and then your body's like, oh, I'm not interested anymore. And then you have the right in a way to leave it. And it's not so hard to leave it because your energy is just not there. When you are a pure generator, what happens when you say yes? It's almost like, you are that kind of the pure builder. So when you've said yes, I'm going to build this, there's no way really that you can get out of the cycle. So then you are in the cycle, and if you have signed up for 1 year of gym, at least until the renewal, you're going to be there. You're going to build the muscles. So it's just so interesting to see. But then if somebody here, like we said, would be an MG or would have a lot of mutable signs, there are so many things in the charts that would speak for like that way of being. And then I think partly too is the shadow frequency of not being able to say, I am, this is what I'm signing up for, and I can rely on myself. So that too, I don't think we have had a lot of good role models, of like how to be reliable, how to be consistent, how to take responsibility. We're all also learning that, I believe.
I love that you bring this up in this way, because when we're looking at these movements of energy through our systems and how do we integrate it into our consciousness, it's really less about whether or not we follow through with a particular activity that we're doing on the outside. So if we go to the gym for January and half of February, and then we kind of like don't go anymore because we don't feel like it, time gets away from us, we don't have the discipline, we're lazy, whatever the judgments are about why we stopped, there's only one thing to recognize. It's that going to the gym was blocking your vital energy, or in the way that you were relating to going to the gym was blocking your vital energy. And this can also be true of having that full year-long commitment and literally going 3 times a week without fail, or whatever it is. So you can relate to going to the gym 3 times a week and never missing and all of that stuff in a way that either frees your vital energy or blocks your vital energy. It's not about going to the gym 3 times a week. It's about your vitality. And if you can relate with the activity that you're doing in the appropriate manner for your design and all of those types of things, you're going to have a better experience of unleashing that vitality into your life. So I think that's one of those lessons about New Year's resolutions and making changes that many people miss. It's like, well, I need to become a better version of myself in 2022. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fulfill all of the images of satisfaction that you have through conditioning and any way that you've built it up. You may simply shift on the inside how it is that you relate with the activities that you are engaged in, and thereby focusing on allowing that vitality to flow through you, which will always lead you further down the path. So Bella, thank you for that contrast. Let's jump into the transmission so that we can get to that. even though this particular energy is in the gate is in the root, this is actually going to be a transmission for our solar plexus chakra as part of our system, our 7 chakra system. That solar plexus chakra is often looked at as a battery, like a life force battery, a vitality battery. It's the thing that drives us and leads us into some of those qualities that in human design are encapsulated in that root. Things like ambition and motivation, drive. So this is simply going to be an activation, a resonant increase of the available energy. So what we're doing with this transmission is giving a rocket boost to whatever energy is inherent and able to flow through you. At this time, when New Year's resolutions become important and you have all this energy to make changes, we're going to just ramp that up and amplify it even a little bit more. And the idea is that you will have more direct experiences of how you are relating with your own dissatisfaction in your life, so that you can become aware in what ways you become no longer present. You are ruled by the future. As that awareness dawns, you begin to unlock more and more of your natural, pure vitality. So that's where we're headed with this particular transmission. So go ahead and close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath in. And just let it go. Take a moment to think about any areas of your life that you have some inherent dissatisfaction. Is it with your body, your routines, your relationships, your finances? Anything that comes up. Just notice the inherent energy that you have to either change it proactively or subtly do nothing about it. That subtle form of doing that is not doing. And notice if you have a prevalence of one type of response to these dissatisfactions. Do you go into judgment? Do you go into frenetic, reactive activities? Cleaning the house from top to bottom when things aren't going according to your plan. Do you feel a form of inertia to those things you're dissatisfied with that you don't seem to be able to do anything about? It is commanded in the presence of divine love and by the golden liquid realms and alchemical powers that the chakra restoration and golden activation absolute essence code be used to activate the solar plexus chakra of each person here to its highest energy frequency holding potential, unleashing the natural forces of pure vitality through the system in resonance with their higher self now. Ta Asia into Doe. As you receive this activation, notice to the degree that your awareness retains some amount of space from the driving motivation of your personality. It is your very personality basis in your inner motivations that generates the low frequency interference of your pure vitality. As your access to this energy is amplified, allow your awareness to recognize the impulsive response, the habitual behaviors that happen within you as you allow yourself to take action from that deep and powerful motivation. Not because your action will bring a relief to your dissatisfaction, but because the form that you inhabit as a human being is built to strive. And if a goal must be identified, let it be to exhaust your ability to strive. Allow your senses to become sensitive to your vitality and notice how your actions affect both your sensitivity and the experience of it. It is commanded in the presence of divine love that new golden streams of Siddhic consciousness are integrated in the best possible way for each person here from their higher self now. Ta Asia into Doe. Let the golden liquid light flowing in through the top of your head down into your body be experienced as pure vitality, whether by memory or direct awareness of life force. See if you can sense the vital nature of this energy as it courses through your body. And when you're ready, come on back to the room. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Lightly stretch any body parts that feel tense. And when you're ready, lightly open your eyes. As Bella mentioned, the transit through gate 38 by the sun will be completed before we have a chance to meet again. So the last time we had that occur was through gate 5, and I did not create a bonus session for that. And I have to admit that I didn't really feel quite right that whole way through. Ah, yeah, J-Lo. So when the when the body responds to subtle energy, oftentimes the movements that occur, we attempt to frame the experience of what is occurring in us with our logical mind. Our conditioning is so deep that certain movements are deemed abnormal. Things like eye fluttering or other types of unusual movements of the body, whether it's limbs or this extends into our emotional bodies as well, as far as the experience that we have with emotional energy, as we are conditioned to produce certain types of expressions in certain types of experiences or circumstances. screaming out loud is generally looked at as abnormal or inappropriate, even when one is angry. And when we have these, albeit more minor movements that occur from these subtle energies, oftentimes what is happening is your physical body is being allowed to process in the most natural way possible the energies that have been present and are being released. So let's say each of us was a perfect being in a perfect world. In the moment that an experience of energetic disharmony occurred within us, oftentimes our physical body, we would think that our physical body would immediately process it out for us, almost instinctually speaking, that as soon as an energy arrives in our body, if the method of processing is an eye fluttering, that would occur in response to the disharmony that is being experienced in the body. However, that isn't how most human beings operate. Those disharmonies are absorbed and held on to. So when we have abnormal movements as a response to subtle energies, whether it's transmissions or just occurring in our daily lives, is extraordinarily helpful for you to be able to allow your body to do what it is that is wanting to occur. So to the degree that you are in non-interference of that eye fluttering, this is greatly beneficial for the processing of your body and of the reorganization of the subtle energies in your system. So, well done with that. So next week, we will be meeting over about gene key 54 and the shadow of greed. And so I am planning to create a bonus session for gene key 38 that will be posted in the area with the replays. I will just simply post that in there, and then we'll send out an email for you. So does anybody have any thoughts about the conclusion of 2021 that you feel moved to share about the coming of 2022? Is there anything that's been percolating for you that you would like to bring up? Would love to see you share that here. If not, no worries. We're going to have a really fun February 22nd this year because of all of the twos going on in the date. For those of you who follow the European processing of calendar dates, it will be 22/02/2022. So that will be a palindromic day to some extent. Awesome, JLo. Yeah, I'm ready to rock out 2022. Fantastic. Yeah, notice if you get that burst of energy flowing through you into this new year, notice how that energy moves and how it triggers any dissatisfaction in your experience. Not that that's a bad thing, but just be aware of what happens. How are you, Bella? I know we're winding down here. Oh, you're quiet.
I feel tired. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening, but I feel tired.
Mm.
Yeah, and I do have to run soon. So.
Yeah, vitality has an unusual impact on our system. We can, just before, as I was waiting for us to begin, I was yawning and yawning and yawning, and I was very, very sleepy after, to some degree, processing this transmission as it was coming into me. So I'm there with you. Excellent, everyone. Thank you, Kelly. Beautiful. Yes, stretching and yawning is good for the body. So I'm sending loving presents from my heart to yours. I want to wish you a very, very happy New Year celebration in whichever way you're going to engage with that, as we have this time to shift into something new. Thank you all for being with us in Lunar Alchemy. We definitely appreciate your presence with us as it contributes to our collective container and beyond. So we'll see you next year. Bye-bye for now.